Hello to everybody. Welcome to the series of webinars that I'm running. For those that don't know me, I'm Anton Dell. I run a consultancy. We specialize in helping fashion brands to find agents worldwide. We've been doing this for 25 years, and we cover all the markets in the world, including China, which is perhaps not the easiest market to get into for everybody, but a very interesting market. And I think I'm going to start off by giving you some statistics. I'm going to get rid of this screen here because I think Mariann sent me some extra statistics, which I think I'm going to quote to you first before we start, because I think they're also quite interesting. Okay, so China is so big. Oh, first of all, I want to say the other person who's with me is Mariann Szluka, and she'll be introducing herself in a moment. So that's who you'll be able to talk to. And she is the brand strategy director for DFO, who are one of the most important distributors in the world, and certainly the largest into China. So some statistics about China. The population of China is really pretty mind-boggling. It's nearly 1.4 billion people, 47% larger than Europe. That's the size of China. It's, I don't even know, about the same size as the whole of Europe, in fact. 70% of luxury consumers in China are under 30. That's a pretty interesting statistic. By 2022, the size of the middle and upper class in China is expected to reach 700 million people. And China's social media space is absolutely huge. With Weibo, it reached 413 million monthly active users, and WeChat has 1.2 billion. So it's pretty extraordinary in terms of its size. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share the screen again with you with some more statistics about China. And then I'm going to get, that's the wrong one, I'm sorry. And then I'm going to ask Mariann some questions so we can really get to understand better how to work in the market in China. The purpose of all of these webinars is to really inform you, give you information in as much depth as we think it will be helpful to you. We don't want to do too much, but to help you to understand the positives and the difficulties of getting into China. Population, we've already said. These are the key selling regions. All these slides here are going to be available on a recording of this webinar. So if you want to know more and be able to check back on some facts, you can do it by getting a recording, which will be automatically sent to you at the end of today's session. Well, it'll probably be tomorrow, but you will get it very soon. Here's the volume of clothing sales in China. In 2019, the retail market volume was 41.165 trillion, which is actually equivalent to 5.88 trillion US dollars. Compared to 2001's data, there was an increase of 8%. Fashion retail market volume was, we'll just do the dollars here, is 139.6 billion in 2019. Again, an increase of 2.6% since 2018. Online shopping retail market volume is 1.2 trillion US dollars. One thing that I have learned and quite surprised me, because before I go on to this next factor, is that actually online clothing with contemporary and modern and, shall we say, the medium and smaller size brands is 20% is sold online. I always had the impression it was much higher, but Mariann has corrected me on that. Obviously, there's a lot of small brands, lower price brands, H&M and many other brands like that, that increase the figure. So I think about 60% is sold online altogether. But in the key brands with many of the medium and smaller sized companies, only 20% is sold online, which means there's a huge market there for bricks and mortar shops. So the volume of goods exported over the last few years has actually gone down. So by the end of 2019, the volume of fashion goods was 151 billion. So it decreased by 4%. The volume of fashion goods imported has grown. So there is a market there. There's obviously a hunger for foreign collections, non-Chinese collections. And in 2018, the volume of imported fashion goods increased by 14.8%. The most successful countries selling into the Chinese market is Vietnam, South Korea, and Indonesia. I know for myself, because I've been to China a few times, that Korean designers are very popular, but I suspect that these large volumes account for a lot of the mass production which goes on in China, in other countries for China. These are the names of the key fashion fairs. Of course, we're going to speak a little bit about fashion fairs too, Mariann, in China. Certainly we know in Europe and most of the rest of the world, there are virtually no fashion fairs. And it's a subject that will come up. It came up a lot yesterday in our webinar. When I was talking to agents, people are going to have to learn to work without fashion fairs, but in some cases, they will be working in a very interesting way. These are the key online sales portals. As you can see by the graph, the volume is increasing steadily. Every year, more and more people are buying online, and digital platforms are, the word digital is like the most important word in fashion at the moment for everybody, from stores to shops to wholesale to everything. You know, everything is going digital. That doesn't mean total business will be digital, but the digital factor is very significant. These give you some idea of the ready-to-wear online sales for the key portals for online. And that's the end. We're not going to go there yet. So I'm going to take the share off. And now I'm going to ask Mariann if you can please tell me about the work you do, the work of DFO, and just introduce yourself, please, and tell us as much as you'd like to help us understand yourself and DFO.
Sure. So hi, Anton, and hi, everyone. And first, I would like to thank you, Anton, for the invitation and for this possibility to join this very interesting conversation. I think it was mentioned in your introduction that I am the head of the brand strategy department at DFO International, which is a 360 market development group for fashion brands. We're looking for development in China. Our territories include mainland China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Macau. And to give a little background on the company, it's a private company which was founded by our founder and CEO, Mei Ding, who is from Taiwan originally. The company was founded in 2010. And because Mei herself is located in Budapest, Hungary, due to family reasons, when she set up the company, she started with 2 offices. One is here in Budapest, where I am located as well. And the other one is in Shanghai, China. Obviously, that's where we also have our showroom and a fully operational team on board. In the first 2 years, the scope of the agency has been quite small. We work with a handful of European designers. And then the company expanded from 2014 onwards. And we launched the largest private commercial showroom in Shanghai. And then along the way, I would say that apart from being a distributor and sales agent for brands, so being what essentially a showroom does, we expanded into many more services for brands. This includes press and marketing, for example. So we have a fully operational press office. in Shanghai, taking care of everything from social media management to celebrity and KOL placements. Then in terms of wholesale, we do the mentioned distribution and sales agency, and then we also operate with buying office model. And then we can actually take care of any further development for brands on the market, like pop-up stores, retail operations, looking for franchisee partners to open monobrand stores for brands, e-commerce channels, very important, or consultancy services. So it's really 360 degree. And I think this is something that sets us apart from all the other showrooms in Shanghai, that we really have this strategic mindset towards establishing fashion brands in China. Now back to my role in the company. As head of the brand strategy department, I am the one looking for new brands to work with on this market. So my team is constantly in touch with new brands who could be interesting for showroom or who would like to develop, their foothold in China, and we can advise for them the best strategies to start with. Another question that I often get is if I speak Chinese. Well, the answer is no, but I don't have to deal with the market itself, so I don't deal with buyer relations. I'm only dealing with brands, so it's thankfully not required in my role, but obviously in the company, majority of the team is Mandarin speaking.
Okay, thanks. My son lives in Shanghai and he's been living there 12 years and he speaks about 8 languages, but he really struggles with his Chinese. Only his children manage very well. It's pretty difficult. So I guess one of the things that's really significant at the moment is COVID-19. Maybe you could, how has this affected business in China, and what's the projection for the recovery?
Mm-hmm. I think the recovery is quite strong in China, especially because China was the first country to get hit with COVID-19, but it was also the first one to start to get back to normal. It's also the strongest fashion market at the moment in the world. So it's since I think 1-2 years, it's now the top one, and it's not the United States anymore in terms of the volume. What we experienced in the past couple of months is that the market is definitely rebounding, but the buyers are more conservative on their budget, and they are more considering making their choices in the right way. So they might go for more well-known brands, or they might go for brands with a more commercial price point. So less likely to take risks, I would say, with new brands.
What about volumes? Are they decreasing their future order volumes, or are they keeping to a similar level?
No, it's definitely decreased compared to, for example, the same period last year. So we cannot say that it's keeping at the same level. But I think actually the proportion of decrease is not as bad as we foresee in February, for example, when the situation, or in March, when the situation looked really dramatic. But from April onwards, I think we are quite optimistic for the remainder of the year. Yeah.
Okay. Now, obviously, there are differences between the Chinese market and other markets in the world. Maybe you could explain what are the differences between the Chinese market and the markets in Europe or the USA, for example?
Yeah, so the Chinese market is quite unique, I would say. It's very different from other markets. I think I would start with the buying calendar, because probably that's That's a problematic point for many brands who are looking to showcase their collections in Shanghai. So the calendar in China is quite late if you compare it with the international dates. It's always after Paris, so both the spring summer and the autumn winter edition is after Paris. Spring summer is normally second week of October, so it's happening just right after Paris Fashion Week, and the autumn winter is actually like the third week of March. So there are even like a 2 weeks long gap between the end of Paris and the start of Shanghai. What this means for brands is that they have to be very flexible with their order and production deadlines, because obviously at the same time Chinese buyers are expecting the same delivery window as the global delivery window, so that makes it a little bit difficult for brands to meet sometimes. What else is important to mention? I think they really like to reorder, so they like to test out, especially if we are talking about a new brand, they like to test out the brand with a smaller order, maybe for the first time. And then if it goes well, they really like to replenish during the retail period.
So would you say that what percentage of business is done on pre-order, and is there a percentage which is done in the season for quicker delivery for many people?
Well, the pre-order is definitely bigger, so it's not like the pre-order is not significant, so it's still a majority of the orders, but I would say if you have a friendly reorder policy and you can serve reorders easily, then you can increase your sales by 20 to 40%.
Yeah. Okay, so I said at the beginning that one of the facts that really struck me is that only 20% of sales are actually online. So what does the brand, excuse me, what does a brand have to do to sell online? Are there costs to do this? Is it easy to get into these online portals? And how can a brand starting out get to do that? I assume if they're working with you, then you would help them with that. But if they're not working with you, are there other ways they can do this?
Yes, so there are definitely costs, and costs are not low. So if we take Tmall, for example, which is a popular platform, if you need to, open a monobrand e-commerce shop, then yes, the setup costs can be quite high, especially if you consider that you would need to move your goods, your stock into China, which already has quite a high cost, because normally the importation costs like plus 30% of the value of the goods on top of the value. So the other thing is that you would need a Chinese company to operate it for you, to operate the store. So you would need a third party who could do this for you.
And do they have to be Chinese?
Yeah, it has to be Chinese.
Right.
So that's another tricky part. Tmall, for example, has a model which is called Tmall Global, where you can actually sell without moving your goods into China. Because Tmall has several warehouses outside China, in Europe, in Asia, also in the States. So that's a possibility, but there are also costs involved, especially with the setup. So to kick off your store, there is some cost barrier.
So we have Timo, and maybe you could just name a couple of the other key ones that are popular.
There is Timo, there is JD.com, which is the other rival company. Because and then there are other platforms to try. For example, Redbook, which is more of a social media angle. It's a little bit like Instagram, and then you have the option within Instagram to sell. So Redbook is a little bit that idea. Then you can also go for something which is more a B2B model, where there is a wholesale account but online. For example, Seco is a quite popular one.
Yeah.
And
so these portals are direct to the public, correct?
Except Seco. So the last one I mentioned,
right.
That's a very popular online retailer, but there it's more a multi-brand concept. So you
Yep.
would be selling to Seco, and then Seco will resell to the customer. I think there is one more that is important to mention, and it's WeChat's own store. So if you have a WeChat account, which is again a social media platform, there are these so-called mini programs, which are like an app within the app.
Yeah.
And you can launch your WeChat store using like basically creating a mini program, which is your WeChat store, and then you can sell your products direct to customer there.
Okay, so I think what I'd like to know is what is the interest in foreign brands in China? I mean, of course, we know that it's because it gets a lot of publicity that you know, the luxury brands, the Armanis and the Versaces and the Pradas of the world, you know, we know it sells there, but what is the general interest of the population in buying something which is not Chinese? And maybe there's different levels there, from a lower level to a medium level. My guess is that most of your brands are medium to high level. So what is it? Is it a real hunger to buy something from Europe, from USA?
Yes, so I mean, DFO mainly works with contemporary and advanced contemporary brands.
Yeah.
Yes, there is definitely a huge market outside luxury, which I think we hear the most about concerning China. I think it's not true anymore that Chinese consumers are only interested in the logo and the big names. They're definitely very interested in trying out new products and new styles. I think in the figures it was mentioned like how the market is growing in terms of young consumers. So there are many young consumers out there in China, and they are very, I mean, there are of course that part which is very into all these luxury labels, like, you know, all the Gucci, Balenciaga, and Louis Vuitton, which, I mean, these brands anyways have a prime time internationally nowadays, but they are very interested in contemporary brands as well and trying out something new.
Are there any particular countries that come to mind where you find the Chinese are interested in, whether it's Italian or British or maybe not American, I'm guessing? I don't know.
I think they are really open. It was again mentioned in the introduction. You mentioned Korea, which is a country China has close relations with. So South Korean brands tend to be successful. I think one of the main reasons is because the two markets are quite similar in terms of preferences and taste and aesthetics. So I think for me, it's always South Korea that is the most similar to China. And the thing is that there are many South Korean celebrities out there which have great number of followers in China.
Okay.
And, you know, those influencers are promoting Korean brands. So there is this synergy between the two countries. Other than that, obviously, made in Italy could ring a bell, but I think it depends on the product. So
okay.
I don't think apart from Korea, there is any specific country that Chinese consumers would look for. They are really open, so it more depends on the product and the style.
Yeah. So just a brief interruption here to say that at the bottom of your screen, you'll see there's a Q&A. If you do have any questions, please put your questions there. We will get to deal with them towards the end. We've already had a few in, and if you have more questions, please just put them in the box and we'll deal with them shortly. Well, shortly being in about 15 minutes, see how we go. In the USA and in many countries in the world, athleisure has been growing fast. Is this the same for China, would you say? Certainly after lockdown, you know, we're all been love our comfortable clothes and we don't want to jump back into our jeans too quickly. But how is that in China?
Yeah, I think in China there was also an increase towards athleisure products. And also in general, I think people tend to buy more, you know, comfortable everyday pieces rather than something evening. But I must say, in general, in China, evening wear is not a big business. So somehow, I mean, concerning contemporary and advanced contemporary market, people are really looking for just the everyday, very stylish clothes, something to wear to the office, and not really the occasion wear. And
do you? I know that the sizing in countries can be different. So do you think, in the brands that you deal with, have they had to adjust their sizing for the Chinese market at all? Is that necessary or important?
I think it's important, but of course it depends on the brand. So for some brands, it's more challenging. I'm talking about American brands or German brands, Scandinavian brands, who, you know, tend to be create their products for taller people. And then in China, obviously the sizing needs to be adjusted for all these brands. So I would advise for all brands who are looking into the market to be more flexible in terms of adjusting the length, especially if we are talking about maxi dresses or maxi skirts or trousers, because everything that is, you know, designed to be like a longer style, the Chinese would hesitate to order because you know that it just needs to be adjusted. So I think that would be a first step for every brand to look at. And then obviously if your market is growing, then you can consider creating an Asian sizing where you also take into account other factors like, you know, the shoulders might be narrower, and so you create the whole sizing keeping in mind your Asian customer.
If a brand's not at all well known, if it's a new designer but they have good money and they've invested in a collection, I guess they just have to go and use a lot of social media to promote the brand in order to make it be of interest. So if you come across a brand which you love but it's got no name and it's a new designer, would you insist really that they invest in serious social media to make it off the ground, to get it off the ground? I would have thought so, or not. Would you do this?
Media, right?
Yeah, or get influencers to make it work. I suppose that's another way to do that, isn't there?
I think it's really a must to work with KOLs, or otherwise named influencers.
Yeah.
And yeah, social media is important. I think, you know, because Instagram is not something that Chinese consumers can use widely, because you would need a VPN to access Instagram along other Western platforms. So there is, I mean, obviously there are all the Chinese consumers outside China who are looking at Instagram, and there are fashion industry professionals within China who are assessing Instagram via VPN. But in general, if you would like to reach out to a wider consumer base, then you would need to appear on Chinese social media platforms like Weibo, WeChat, and Redbook.
What about the fashion fairs? How important is Shanghai Fashion Week? Because, you know, because fashion fairs are a little bit not working too well at the moment, is that going to remain, or that period is going to be the important selling period still? Or are people going to is there going to be a Shanghai Fashion Week? I really should have asked you that. With the, there's a long list of other fashion weeks as well, I know. So are any of them going to happen this season in China?
Right now, it seems that Shanghai Fashion Week will happen in October. So
okay,
we are preparing for Shanghai Fashion Week. And I think in China, what we see that these dates are still very, very important. So I think this year being our strategy also to try to, be more flexible with sales dates and sell in different periods and sell all around the year and sell based on different kind of ideas. But still, it's a very important period. So I think any brands who would like to make it into China should come first during Shanghai Fashion Week, because it's just so busy. There are so many things going on that that's the place to be. That's where you have to show to reach out to.
But are they talking about how they're going to manage social distancing in the Fashion Week? Is that a subject which people are discussing? Because I know, for example, in Copenhagen, where this main fashion show is being cancelled, but Revolver, which is more the contemporary show, is going to happen. They're spreading it out over 2 buildings, and also they're going to give very basic stands to keep the price low. Are they doing something similar in Shanghai? Do you know?
I think it's difficult to say at the moment, because since the virus outbreak, there was no event of this scale happening.
Okay.
So the March edition of Shanghai Fashion Week was cancelled, so it was all digital only. There was no on-site event. So October will be the first one to happen. So I guess we will see it closer to the date.
Okay. So maybe it would be very interesting for everybody to, if you can give us sort of a case study of a typical brand and the steps that you would take to help it onto the road in China, without going into any financial details maybe, but just to sort of the process. Would you be able to talk us through about a little bit? Just give a typical example.
Yeah, so if we take an independent contemporary fashion brand, let's say, as an example, which doesn't have much awareness in China locally, but the brand has high market traction, meaning that the style sits well with the market and the price point is right and so on, then I think the typical pathway that we would suggest is to try wholesale. So start showing in Shanghai during Shanghai Fashion Week, and all the pre-showrooms if you have more collections than 2.
Yep.
And then I think what we could help with, especially if there is no brand awareness, would be press and marketing. Because that's just really crucial. So for example, we do for all the brands in the showroom press and marketing. It's just very goes hand in hand. Sales. So that's definitely something that needs to be included in the strategy. If the style is right, but maybe there are some aspects that could be adjusted to the market, like collection structure, the size of the collection, calendar, pricing, seasonality, sizing, and so on, then I think it would require some consultancy on our end. So we would include some consultancy in the package. And then the pathway would be building up everything through the press and wholesale activities. Obviously, the goal is to get to D2C eventually. So I think the benchmark would be reaching like 50 stores across mainland China. And that's the point where you can actually look at where you are making most of the sales. So where are the consumers looking for your product? And then, you can look at the possibility of opening maybe brick and mortar stores through franchisee or your own stores. DFO can also help looking for franchisee partners in China. Obviously, if you are selling to above a certain amount, then it's easy to find partners interested in investing it. And then again, with the D2C, another important thing is e-commerce, which we talked about.
Yep.
So launching on one of those platforms so you can reach your customers directly. So I think the most important for the brand is to reach to that point where it can sell directly to the Chinese customer, because obviously the margins are much higher than if you do wholesale.
Okay, that's interesting. So if you're selling direct to a retailer, or you're selling on behalf of the brand to a retailer, what's the typical payment time or terms that Chinese people take? Do they pay within days, or is it months or weeks? What is the average time?
I think they tend to follow, if they would like to order from the brand, they tend to follow the payment terms set by the brand.
Right.
So it's not a problem for Chinese buyers to follow those. Maybe some bigger accounts have their own terms they work with, but here we are talking about corporate accounts like department stores. That's the same internationally. And then obviously it can happen that some buyers have problems trading with foreign companies. So that again, here again, a distributor can come into the picture, because then it's much easier for
I can imagine, I imagine most people use distributors if they can. Yeah, I'm sure that's the right way. And what about multi-brand shops? Because I remember a few years ago, there were very, very few. Is that changing?
Yeah, definitely. I think a majority of the market consists of multi-brand stores. So the multi-brand scene is really blooming in China. I think our company also makes majority of the multi-brand stores rather than department stores and bigger accounts. So there are just so many players out there that, considering the order coming from all these small players, it's much more significant.
Okay, so I think we should allow a little time for questions here. One more question to you, though, which one's always interesting for me, is what about the concept store? I know concept stores are growing quite considerably in Europe and USA. Has that taken off in China at all?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Dover Street Market has a store in Beijing as well, but there are also local ones appearing. So yes. Okay,
so please remember, if you have any questions, please put them into the Q&A box if you can. One or two people have put them in the chat box, and that's fine. I can find them there as well. So first question here is from Carla. Are there any preferences in the Chinese population about sustainability or sustainable brands?
I think for China, there is still a little bit more time required. So it's definitely not as hot topic as, for European brands or American brands. But yeah, I mean, Chinese buyers like the concept itself, but I think it's not at that point where they base their decision on.
Yeah, I think it's probably the same in Europe and USA, really. Actually, I think sustainability is talked about a lot, but in the end, you buy what you love, not because it's sustainable. I think that's what's really important. Here's another question, which is interesting for me, because it's about swimwear. When I was in Korea about 2 years ago, somebody said to me, it's nearly impossible to sell swimwear in Korea. So I asked them why. And they said the reason is that Koreans don't sit in the sun on the beach. They go down to the beach and they sit in a tent, and they don't want to get brown. I don't know if it's the same in China. So maybe you could tell me about, is swimwear a significant item that has a good volume of sales there?
Yeah.
And if so, The questioner is actually asking which parts, but I don't know if that's maybe too complex for you to.
Yeah, it's probably the same as South Korea. So Chinese people don't tend to spend as much time under the sun as Western people. So I think, yeah, it's not as important as in the States, for example.
But there is a market for swimwear, surely there must be, because people swim even if it's.
There is. I'm afraid I cannot really advise because we don't do swimwear, and so I haven't really tapped into that market.
Okay. So here's a question from Todor. He's asking, what do you think about some digital platforms offering support to independent and emerging brands from the West by providing promotion, marketing, sales, but also sourcing and production, acting as a licensee for the brands?
I think, I mean, it depends on which company we are talking about. I think it would be important to have some foothold in China. So even if these are Western companies, if they don't have a company in China, I'm not sure, because I think any brands who would like help in terms of the Chinese market, they need to engage with a Chinese company, because it's just, you need someone local there.
Okay. Another question. Which is the best marketplace beside Tmail and JD to enter in the Chinese market?
So definitely these two are the biggest. And I think I mentioned before, there is the WeChat mini program, which is also a marketplace. And then you can also sell on Redbook. But yeah, Tmall and JD.com are definitely the biggest ones.
Yeah. Okay. One perhaps a little more complex here. How can I contact and access to local distributors for the offline distribution? How would you go about contacting them? Obviously, there is yourself, but if somebody's looking for other people, is there some route that people could take? How could they find them? Obviously, I just put in a word for ourselves here, our consultancy, that, you know, we can help you to find people, but if somebody doesn't come to me, where might they go to look? And how would they find the names of the companies that might be able to help them?
Interesting questions. I mean, we are distributors ourselves, so
you don't want to send them to anybody else, but you know, you can't take on every style, every fabric, because you know you have your own selection of brands, and maybe something's conflicting. So if you can't help them, where might they begin to look?
So there are many Hong Kong-based companies, for example, because especially these old-style distributors who started a very long time ago, even before China started to open up towards international brands, even before Shanghai Fashion Week started to be more international. So there are Hong Kong distributors that a brand can look for, and then there are mainland China ones like ours. Yes.
Yep.
I mean,
okay. So somebody's asking here, can I give your contact details? Well, I should have said that at the beginning, that at the end of the webinar, which is not that far away, we're coming along in time here, there will be a screen where you'll have the contact details. Also, you will, as an attendee, automatically get a copy of this webinar, and all the information will be there, including the contact details for Mariann and myself. So we have another couple of questions here. How can the economic return be calculated based on the investment made? Wow, I mean, I don't know how you answer that. I don't think anybody can answer that easily.
Yeah, so I think for the investment made, I mean, definitely you have to think about working with a partner in China. So if we assume it's a showroom, and you commit for a 2 years partnership, then it would be definitely like a 5 digits figure that you would need to invest in terms of euros throughout the first 2 years. So let's say between 25 to 50k euros.
That's a figure that I've had quoted at me lots of times. People say to me, look, you know, if you're not willing to invest 25,000 minimum, you're really not going to get very far in this market at all. And it takes time to develop business. We know that it does in anything. So I think we come to what may be our last question here. So what type of investment to prioritize to maximize the number of sales, KOL and KOC? Well, it's really similar before, but maybe you could tell people what KOL and KOC is, because not everybody will know that.
Yeah, sure. So I think KOL is a term that most people are more familiar with because it's an older term. It means key opinion leader. So it's basically what in the Western you call influencers. The difference is that KOLs in China always come with a celebrity background, I would say. So they are either known for being actors or singers or just fashion industry professionals, but you know, they earned on their own right some kind of celebrity status. And then the KOC term is key opinion consumer. So this refers to average consumers, you know, who are more like giving reviews on products, and this is how they gained a follower base. The KOCs normally have smaller follower base, and I mean, compared to the KOS who can, you know, normally reach out to millions of people due to their celebrity status. And I think what is important to mention is that with the KOS, obviously you can reach to a quite big customer group, but at the same time, you know, the engagement might be lower because, you know, there are so many sponsored products, and obviously consumers can tell what is sponsored and what is, you know, like honest recommendation of the product. So in terms of the KOCs, you have this advantage, but at the same time, they might just have a smaller follower base. So if you are working with KOCs, then you definitely need to work with a lot of them at the same time if you would like to have, you know, the same effect of reaching out to millions or thousands of customers in China.
Millions, we hope. Okay, well, Mariann, thank you so much. It's been really interesting. I think we've all learned a lot that we didn't know. If you want to contact Mariann, her details are coming up now, as with mine. I just want to thank all of you so much for joining us. And we are doing one more webinar next Monday on Scandinavia. That will be our last one for the season, because I think after that everybody will be busy selling or trying to sell. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much, Mariann, for your time in Budapest. You can now go and have a wonderful meal there in Budapest, of which there's plenty of good food, I know. And so it's a goodbye to everybody, goodbye to Mariann. There are your details. I'll leave them on screen for a bit. And see you all again soon, and happy day to you. Happy rest of the day. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.